I remember in the early days of the Fringe that I think it was the second year of the Edinburgh Fringe, and we had a show on, and there were only six other shows in the Fringe, so there were seven, and already there were conversations happening in the media and actually around kitchen tables, certainly in our house, about whether seven was too many for a city the size of Edinburgh, and could the modern word is infrastructure. Could the infrastructure handle seven shows? And we weren't sure. But that conversation happened, and anyway, there were seven shows. And the city itself was getting very busy with tourism. In fact, I think the very first Japanese family came to Edinburgh to go and visit the castle and the museums and so on. And maybe if they were lucky, they'd get a taxi all the way out to Loch Ness and go and see the monster and so on. And so the Okinawas were the first Japanese family, lovely people. And I heard the story that one of the seven shows, which was some friends of ours who were doing, I think they were doing Samuel Beckett, a version of Waiting for Godot, which, because they had a lot of people in their theatre company, they'd expanded to 74 people in the cast. I won't go into what that looked like on stage, but anyway, they were walking around, and they just had their 15 flyers printed, and they bumped into the Okinawas on the Royal Mile, and they were walking up towards their visit to the castle. In those days, that was brilliant because it was such a big event that the Okinawas from Japan were going to visit the castle. The castle had arranged to meet them and take them around personally. And actually, I think there was a bagpiper welcoming them up the Royal Mile. Anyway, it was they were so fascinated by everything that was going on around them. They bumped into our friends who had their 15 flyers with trees all on them. And when they bumped into them, they had a conversation, and the Okinawas didn't even know there was a fringe happening, and so they talked about that, and then they took a flyer and then promised to bring it back after they'd seen the show, because these things were not cheap. And they enjoyed the show too, but it led to the idea that maybe the Royal Mile, with tourists like that, and Americans too were coming. I think there were a couple of American families that also came to Edinburgh, growing the tourist numbers, as they might say. And so they thought that the Royal Mile would be a very good place to advertise shows and to give out those flyers. And so we worked out how we could do that, because certainly you couldn't have seven shows all at once, all the people crowding the Royal Mile and trying to give out flyers, sort of in competition with each other. And so what they did was they made a rota. I think it was the council that got involved, and it's good because it only took a couple of months to agree the slots, and our show, for example, which was brilliant, because that was going to be a musical version of Waiting for Godot, as it happens, and so we had the 9 till 10 slot, and that was very, very good in some ways, because lots of people were still going to work, and so they looked at our flyers too. What we did was we showed them the flyer. They could write down the relevant information, and of course we had the flyer for the next person. And so we had the 9 till 10 slot, and the Shakespeare had the 10 till 11, and the agit-prop people, of course, had to be around lunchtime, and so on. And so the whole day was brilliant, because we had a whole hour on the Royal Mile giving out our flyer, and of course taking it back too. And so that was the beginning. That was the beginning of flyering on the Royal Mile at the Edinburgh Fringe. And of course, what I hear now is it's just chaos. I mean, it's a stampede. I can't see how anybody would want to have the time to talk about their show. It used to take us, the pitch, we got it down to about 35 minutes. And now apparently you don't have that time at all, and apparently they don't even go on the Royal Mile, then they use tic-tac and stuff like that. But I do miss the early days of the Fringe,